And we are live. What's going on, guys? Anthony Dream Johnson here today, founder. Sorry about that. Founder of 21 Studios, co-founder of the Red Man Group, and founder of the 21 Convention. Today, I'm broadcasting live out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So remote broadcast today. And today's guest will be special guest to the show, first time on it, and that's Paul Elam, founder of A Voice for Men and An Ear for Men, two different entities he actually operates. He has been a men's rights leader and men's rights activist for several decades, I believe, a very long time. You've probably seen him in the Red Pill documentary that came out, I think, in 2016. It's pretty famous around the world. It was getting banned from movie theaters, things like that. He was featured in that pretty prominently. Before we get into today's episode, our sponsors today are the 21 Convention, as always, upcoming soon in Orlando, Florida, October 1st to 4th. There'll be a lot of great speakers there for men and fathers at the main event, including myself, Elliot Hulse, Jesse Lee Peterson, Richard Grannon, Coach Greg Adams, Alpha Male Strategies, and Steve Brule and Terrence Pop. You guys might know him, especially Steve, who does a lot of shows with Paul Elam himself. We also have an event for fathers where we are rebuilding the patriarchy because the feminists smashed the old one, so we got to build a new one. And of course, we're going to make women great again at the same time. So it'll be a very fun time. You can get tickets at the 21convention.org. That's .org, not .com. Without further ado, and enough with the ads, please help me welcome to the show for the first time, Mr. Paul Elam. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing pretty good, man. On a little mini trip here to South Dakota. Really enjoying the freedom and the sunshine and the outdoors. And compared to Florida, it's very cool up here. It's like a summer or a Florida winter right now.
So absolutely, I love it up in that area.
Yeah, it's my first time in the Midwest. I've never actually been up here before. And I've been able to open carry a firearm for the first time and all kinds of fun shit. So I'm really, really enjoying the outdoors being up here.
Absolutely.
Yep. So how you doing, man? How's your year been? It's been a hell of a year for everybody. Before we get into the questions I have, but
absolutely crazy. I've just not seen so much insanity, I don't think, in any other time in my life as what's going on now around a flu virus and politics, obviously just in chaos. So it makes for interesting times. We ought to have plenty to talk about.
Yeah. And you're in your mid-late 50s now? What age are you? Okay, wow. Yeah, wow. So I'm only... Yeah, I'm feeling it too. I'm almost 32 now. I'm feeling it slightly. But you've seen a lot of America that I haven't. I mean, I was born in the late 80s, so for you to say that, I've heard other men your age say that too, and I believe it. And that's alarming to say the least. But
yeah, mind you, I watched Watts burn and Detroit burn on TV in the late 60s. I was alive when that was happening, and it still wasn't as crazy as it is right now.
Wow. Yeah, that has to be very reminiscent too, what you're saying. But yeah, the insanity of it's just been nuts. I don't even remember. I barely remember the Rodney King riots. Even that is not even in my memory. And that was, I think, a lot smaller than obviously what we're seeing.
Right.
Yeah, super wild, man.
So no, it's nuts.
Yeah. Yep. So some of the first questions I wanted to get into. Let me pull up my website here. So the first one was actually a personal one because years ago I was watching your YouTube channel. And I was, I was a fan of yours and what you were doing to a big degree. I remember first seeing you, I think, on the Spearhead a long time ago, the website.
Oh, you're going way back now.
Oh, yeah. I knew the founder a little bit. I think Bill Price, he interviewed me one time.
Yep.
And I was much more pickup artist focused at that point, so I got a lot of heat from the men's rights guys. But
yeah.
But actually, a few of them came out to our convention. They really liked it. And they were very skeptical. They were like, we'll check it out. So... But I saw you do a video, and it was you used to work with Christina Hoff Sommers, and you did a YouTube video criticizing her. It was very surprising to me. And at first, I didn't know what to make of it, because obviously you both are very critical of feminism, which I liked a lot, but I didn't understand it. And I found an article here. It was from way back in 2016. Paul Elam attacks Christina Hoff Sommers as crypto, misandric, privilege-seeking gender parasite.
Well, I was being diplomatic.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about what happened here and why she's I think she still has some great criticisms of feminism, but I eventually came around, I think, to your opinion that there's something kind of off here. So can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, and mind you, I've never changed my opinion. I think Christina Hoff Sommers is a great voice challenging the feminist narrative. I think she does a lot of good work, and we're behind her. We published her work on A Voice for Men. But she also identifies as a second wave feminist. And that is a pretty accurate description of her. She views things in very distorted terms. There is a lot of female privilege that comes through in what she has to say. And she pushes for men to be of service to her in ways that I don't think are fitting with what an informed man would want these days.
Yeah.
And she's very quick to challenge and shame. She never tried to engage me about my differences of opinion with her. She simply came out in a couple of different places and mischaracterized what I had to say about her, and did not address any of the concerns I had. For instance, one of the things that I picked apart in one of her talks was that she said she was still a feminist because poverty affects women more than men. And that's a lie.
Yeah, like homelessness is huge for men and small for women, right?
Absolutely. And there's all sorts of nuances in that too. When you look at how they calculate the poverty line for men and women, women who receive spousal support and child support, that income is not counted toward whether or not they're qualified for benefits for people who are below the poverty line. So it just isn't counted. But on the other hand, for men who are paying that child support and paying the spousal support, that income doesn't count toward helping them get benefits either. So, the men's expenses is ignored, the women's income is ignored, they get the benefits. Meanwhile, 75% of all homeless people that are sleeping on the street are men. So she totally sold a bill of goods there and didn't want to address it. And that is just the beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like typical Orwellian kind of doublethink with a lot of that. Yeah.
It is.
I wanted to bring this up too, that I saw a nice tweet from Janice. And I wanted to let's talk about this for a second, but this was March 31st, I think earlier this year. And Janice tweeted, Janice Fimengo, you do some shows with her on Studio Brule. I've always had a great respect for Christina Hoff Sommers' research into the lies of feminism and the disadvantages created by feminists for boys in school. But in this video, she laughs over her own willed ignorance about men's issues. Sad to see. And it looks like Christina was laughing about MGTOW and men going their own way and stuff like that.
And she was, I believe, if that's the video I think that she tweeted, she was also going after me personally in that for having criticized her.
Yeah. Yeah, Janice is like the... so talk to me about your experience with Professor Janice Fimengo versus Christina Hoff Sommers. Because I think a lot of people see similarities between them. But at the end of the day, I think Janice is far more intellectually honest and focused sincerely on men's issues and men's rights. Can you talk to me about your opinion of that and your experience with her?
Well, yeah, that is to say that Janice is intellectually honest. And I have found many times when Christina Hoff Sommers is not intellectually honest. She's quite intellectually dishonest. Another difference between the two, I think the similarities stop where you have both of them are anti-feminist and they both happen to be female. Okay. Well, and Christina Hoff Sommers is a feminist, anti-feminist. So, people can intellectually play with that all they want to. She speaks out against feminism, and so does Janice. On the other hand, Janice understands concepts like gynocentrism. Janice understands that that's a very real thing that men contend with in their daily lives, and that gynocentrism also pushes its way into our governance, into legislation, to all manner of life for men and women. Christina Hoff Sommers doesn't know that that gynocentrism exists, but she seems to thrive off of it by placing herself on a pedestal as a woman.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll put. I wanted to shift gears a little bit to some, I almost forgot before we get further into the show, some positives for men's rights, I think, that we've seen in recent years. And I wanted to get your take on those. So one of them, I just popped it up on screen a second ago, an accident. There have been some changes through the Department of Education and the Trump administration for Title IX, basically kind of minimizing the kangaroo courts or rolling them back that the Obama administration got started years ago especially for college-age men, things like that. So I want to know your thoughts on this and any other changes you've seen positive from the Trump administration. or any kind of positive commentary you have on what you've seen his administration do for
Well, I
men.
think there's quite a bit. The big one is the one you've got up on the screen there, the challenging of the kangaroo courts, the star chambers that have been formed on college campuses across the nation for the past 20 years. This is something that was a product out of the Obama-Biden administration, with Joe Biden pulling the strings on a lot of that to get these star chambers in place and to remove rights of young men who have been accused of sexual assault. And as you may know, I mean, we've seen some cases so extreme that arrest warrants have been issued for women who were making false allegations because they filed false police reports.
Wow.
And the police sought them to arrest them, and yet the school said, no, we're not dismissing the complaint.
Wow.
That happened in the case of Caleb Warner and a couple of other cases where young men were just willy-nilly accused of sexual assault after obviously consensual sex. The women were proved to be liars, and the school said, no, we're still expelling the men. That's how rigged this system is. And so the Trump administration, I think rightly, took a very cold, calculated, factual look at what was going on, and they've responded with the headline that you're reading there on the screen. I think it's fantastic. And I think a lot of that is because men's rights activists have been hammering on this subject for 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I think we're finally seeing the results of this. So for the all the crowd that says MRAs never get anything done, just take a look at the screen.
Yeah. Yeah, another one I wanted to ask you about, I'm not too familiar with it, but I was talking with Dr. Warren Farrell about it about a month or two ago. And that was I think it was 2018 or 2019 in Kentucky. I think they got equal shared parenting as a default. And it's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So I wanted to ask you about that win for men's rights too, because that seemed pretty big.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's happening in more places than Kentucky. There is finally incrementally being some advances made toward shared custody. And Kentucky is one of the prime places where it's actually already happened. But these efforts are happening in other states too, much to the chagrin of feminist activists who come out at every turn to try to stop shared parenting, even though the official position of the National Organization for Women is that the only reason women get custody in so many cases is because they are unfairly and misogynistically perceived to be better child caregivers than men.
Wow.
But when it comes to, all right, fine, let's just split the duties between the men and the women. Oh, they don't want anything with that because that robs women of the ability to extract child support and other funds out of the men they're divorcing. So it's all a big hypocritical mess. But that's another area where men's advocates are actually making headway legally into these areas. And it's finally starting to happen across the board. So I give another score for our team on that.
Yeah, I'd say so. I know it almost got passed in Florida not too long ago, or is making progress. It got killed at the last minute, but I think some of the guys I know working on it, they're very passionate about it because, like you say, it's a big win for men and fathers, and it's real and it's actionable, and that affects families and men and children. The future.
Another thing that happened in Florida, unfortunately, was Rick Scott, when he was governor of Florida, they passed legislation ending lifetime alimony, and Scott vetoed it.
Wow.
Our great conservative friend, Rick Scott, vetoed that, pandering to the women's vote.
Yeah, he's kind of a scumbag. I'm much more of a DeSantis fan myself.
Yeah, me too. Believe me, not a fan of Scott at all.
Regarding the Trump administration, I mean, obviously this was massive for the country in a million ways. 2016 when he won. Are there any other ways that he has helped men that I haven't brought attention to? And are there any things that you wish he had done during his first term for men that he hasn't done?
Well, there's things he's done I wish he hadn't done. There's also things that he's done that have been unprecedented, but are sort of hard to put your finger on. He was the first sitting president who openly acknowledged that it was open season on young men in college campuses. He actually,
I remember that.
said that it was a dangerous time to be a young man. Of course, you would have never heard that from Bathhouse Barry or his buddy or any other sitting president. That was great. One of the mistakes he made in the tax cuts, though, is that he ended the income tax exemption, or at least the write-off for alimony and child support that men had been getting. And that was, I think, a definite move in the wrong direction.
Okay. Yeah, it was the 2018, the tax cuts,
Yeah. But, I mean, the man's record is not perfect, but when I see what we have to compare him to when it comes to the lives of men, I'm going with Trump all the way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hillary would have castrated all of us given the opportunity. So,
well, guys like you and I,
I'm pretty happy with how it's going for men.
Yeah, if Hillary was president, guys like you and I might be in jail by now.
No joke, man. I believe it. Yep. So speaking of politics as it relates to men, so we've recently seen, of course, here we go. Kamala Heels Up Harris was picked as Joe Biden's VP. But the more important thing, I think, with this, I mean, she's her own clusterfuck of problems and shenanigans. But basically, he had to pick a female VP. A man was basically any man, even in the Democrat, the Looney Tunes and stuff. He was excluded from even the potential of being considered based on the way he was born. Regardless of what his race was and how he performed in the primaries, and what he polled, all that crap was out the window because he had a penis and balls and a Y chromosome. So talk to me about this and how the country has arrived at a point where a major political party excluded and the supposed, gender equal utopia we're trying to live in, it was excluded specifically and explicitly from even getting the position. And then it was given to Heels Up Harris, Kamala Blow or whatever they call her.
Well, first of all, though, I have to chastise you. It's Kamala. You're racist if you say Kamala. I found that out, that you can never say Kamala. It's Kamala, and you're culturally insensitive if you mispronounce that. I think it's part and parcel to the times here, Anthony. If they would have had their way, I think it would have been a female nominee for president. And look at what this tells you. The pickings among women were so bad, so awful, that even this, newly woke, enlightened Democrat Party that was going to put women in positions of leadership couldn't find a single one to break the 3% support in the polls. They're awful candidates, all of them. Kamala Harris is hated across the board. She dropped out of the race even before California numbers came in, because I don't think she wanted the humiliation of losing her ass in California. And so now she is the presumptive or nominee for vice president, and she actually is a heartbeat away from a presidency that may not last 4 years if the guy gets elected.
Never mind age, yeah.
Joe is not doing well, apparently. He looks sort of physically okay, but he's obviously entering the early stages of senility. That's happening. And so they, in effect, have put their presidential nominee up there in Kamala Harris, who couldn't break 3% in popularity. I hope that has the expected impact on the election, but I don't know if it will.
Yeah, there's so much going on with it right now, with potential voter fraud, election fraud, mail-in ballots, all the garbage. Question: do you think if a female there was plenty that were running, right? There was Kamala, there's Pocahontas, all these chicks are running. Do you think if a female had won the Democratic nomination over Biden, over all the others, do you think they would have also picked a VP female as well, just to double up the female primacy of it?
Probably. That would be my guess. I could see a scenario certainly where they would have chosen a man, trying to make some sort of appeal for the votes of male Democrats. But I think it would have gone to be a woman-only ticket. Yeah.
To contrast, it looks like it would be good against the evil white men of the Pence and
Uh,
Trump.
Absolutely. And of course, uh, women nowadays, the culture of women that we've raised, halfway, maybe they don't even accomplish something. They aspire to accomplish something and they immediately begin celebrating as though it's already been accomplished.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been in that spirit they would have picked a second woman for the ticket, just so they could dance around for the cameras and say, "Look at us."
Yeah, make a big spectacle out of it. Yeah. Yeah, look at
Sure.
us. We're the first double female, ticket.
Oh yes, women rule, boys
Yeah, yeah.
drool.
Yeah. Jesus. Yep. So I wanted to take this somewhere, but I'm having a brain fart with it right now. That's pretty important. We'll get
That's
back to
okay.
it.
I have them all the time.
Yeah. It's part of getting older. My 30s here.
Oh yeah, you're really pushing it, dude.
Let's back up here for a second. So you've been a men's rights leader and activist and all these things, a writer and a podcaster, many things. What has your experience been with that from start, not to finish, but from start to now? It's been a long time. I mean, that you've seen the culture change, you've seen politics change. Never mind 2016, but even before that, like, what has that experience been for you personally over all these years, and how has it
Oh man,
changed?
it's been great. It's been the greatest thing in the world, honestly.
Yeah,
When I started this, the narrative that we embrace about men in this culture was absolutely almost not heard of anywhere. I mean, there was a few obscure forums in places across the internet where guys were talking about these issues, some, and every once in a while in the comment section of a mainstream misandric hit piece bashing men, you would see one or two items of dissent in the comments. Now, that since after I got started, after Karen Strawn came on board with this stuff and some others down the road, we've seen this narrative reach the point that now they're challenging Title IX, they're challenging presumed female custody. Um, the mainstream, a lot of places have shut their comments off because when they produce their misandric garbage attacking men, people flood the comments condemning them. So they've
yeah,
had to turn their comments off. I've seen in the past, I would say 12 years, that much of a shift. It's been huge. And it's been a pleasure to watch. And it's been a pleasure to see feminists have to go on the defensive so much, get back
yeah,
on their heels, because they were, at the time that I started, feminists were used to nothing they said was challenged. If
yeah,
they said it, it was true. And everybody bowed and everybody kissed the ring and complied with them. And now that's not happening. And it's not happening. Women are finally starting to speak up against this bullshit. And so it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been hard sometimes. I mean,
yeah.
it's not fun seeing your name in print so many times when people are attacking you. But that's part of the price.
Yeah, I was gonna actually pull this up. The SPLC, which I consider a hate group themselves, they
Absolutely.
they call you a male supremacist and some other guys we know. And what are your thoughts on the SPLC labeling you? This to me is slander and defamation. I mean, it's fucking stupid.
It's my badge of honor.
Okay.
Matter of fact, a couple of my buddies, Tom Golden and another guy, got together and got me a T-shirt, and it says, "I got named a one-man hate group by the SPLC, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." Um, I revel in this. This is the SPLC is a hate group. They're a fraud group. All they do is con old people from who were coming of age and starting their careers in the late 60s and who are now a senior population. That's still their source of money. They're still drumming up scare tactics to tell the people. And now one of the scare tactics is the misogynists are coming for your children, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So they're raising money on it, and I'm fine with that. It didn't bother me in the
Yeah.
least that they did it, and I would have expected it because they are liars and fraudsters. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a minute ago too. Women speaking up against feminism and this feminist bullshit. One of the things I wanted to mention, of course, is "Make Women Great Again," which we talked about earlier this year.
I love that. That is
Thank you.
a stroke of genius.
Yeah, I fell in love with it as soon as I saw it, the slogan a long time ago. Although I did find later that Stefan Molyneux had done a video of the same title, but it was pretty strictly political. It wasn't designed to be kind of a cultural, social shift. But this reminds me too, like, you guys are seeing feminists, or not feminists, but women speak up against feminism, I think in a more political realm, so especially as it relates to family law and things like that. But this is a whole like cultural thing, even that's not too like I am, much in favor of what you're talking about politically and legally, but it's also cultural and social. It's anti-thought culture. It's hookup culture for women. I think promiscuity is very bad for women. It can be bad
Sure.
for men maybe too, but for women, I think it's pretty horrible, very fast. And this is pushing against all that. I think it's the first time ever, and this is why the feminists are freaking out all year, the beginning of the year. Like we reached like 100 million because it's the first time I think that women now have something to grab onto, and it's pretty positive. It's like, yeah, women were better before, and now they kind of suck, and we need to change that.
We were talking earlier about the differences between Christina Hoff Sommers and Janice Fiamingo.
Yeah.
I can put that in a nutshell with this. I know Janice Fiamingo reacted to that hat in a very positive way.
Yeah.
He thought it was great because she recognizes, by the way, that women do suck in modern times. For the most part, they're defective, and they've outlived their usefulness in many ways. And it's a very sad thing. It's very sad for women and very sad for men. Christina Hoff Sommers, of course, would hate that hat.
Well, yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, absolutely. Because her model of the world is still men sacrificing for women and never questioning their authority in life and never challenging them to be better than what they've become. I think it's a great hat. It's a great slogan, and it's a great fight because understand, women are fucking miserable.
Yep.
When you look at all the research that's done on levels of happiness, men are much happier than women across the board, even though men are objectively in worse shape. I mean, they die more frequently of suicide, they suffer depression, alcoholism, drug addiction. All these social maladies impact men much more than they do women, yet men are happier than women. Go figure. Women are suffering and miserable because they've been infantilized for the past 50 years. And when you infantilize somebody, they're never going to be happy.
And feminism is the primary driver of that, in your opinion, yeah?
I think feminism is the primary driver of that, but I also think that we have a big, strong streak in the conservative community that still deifies women and is quick to kiss butt.
Let's talk about that because the next one I wanted to pull up article, it's from actually a marriage and family therapist, I believe, Suzanne Venker. And it's a pretty great article, and she was criticizing Tomi Lahren, who's a conservative, I think a fake conservative, kind of fake MAGA thought. I think she's 28 years old now, so she's pushing 30. And as you probably know, she went on a 30-minute rant the other day on Instagram and Facebook or something. And actually, the title of it is Tomi Lahren's Anti-Men Screed Demonstrates Why Dating is Dead. This is written by a woman.
Yes, Suzanne Venker. I like her. She's another one of the precious few that are very, very worthy of attention.
Yeah. But talk to me about your thoughts on Tomi Lahren and the state, like she's saying here, the state of modern dating and why it's dying. I mean, Tomi Lahren is I think she's fairly attractive. She's not ugly, obviously. I think people saying she's gorgeous, it's pretty over. It's just makeup. Couple pounds.
Oh yeah, she is fairly attractive in a sort of Fox News rubber stamp news female news anchor kind of way. They all look kind of alike to me. To use a term, she's perfect for the Fox News cameras and what have you. On the other hand, she is 28, and by God, in the entertainment industry where Tomi Lahren is, 28 is the wall. 28 is when your use by date is starting to collect some dust, and I don't think it's any coincidence that she's hit that age in life, and that what she came out with in this ridiculous screed against men seemed more like a petulant 14-year-old who was angry because a boyfriend didn't act the way she wanted him to. Yeah. And that seemed to just ooze out of her commentary for the whole time. It was a 14-minute and 58-second Taylor Swift song. And that's it. I think she shot herself in the foot with this. And I think that the fact that she shot herself in the foot with this is definitely a sign of the changing times, of what you're talking about, this pushing this cultural narrative in a different direction. 5 years ago, everybody would have been bowing at her feet.
Yep.
For doing this and saying, you go, girl. You really tell those men they need to man up and grow up and be more like what you want, because that is the world that Tomi Lahren grew up in. That was the narrative of her life. And I think she just got a very rude awakening that isn't the world anymore. And baby, you ain't all that.
Yeah, I'm gonna offer her a press pass to the Make Women Great Again convention. She needs it, and she probably will hate it and reject it. We have other major news coming out. Washington Examiner, Vice News wants to come out, but I'm kind of telling them to fuck off. BuzzFeed, shit like that. But I would let Tomi come because she needs it. I mean, she needs to be in the audience. Never mind covering it. But she won't come, and she'll probably hate it and get started screaming about it on Facebook or something.
Well, I'd like to add something to sweeten the pot with that, Anthony.
Okay.
I happen to be very willing to counsel errant women back into their appropriate role, and I'll offer her 3 free sessions if she'd like to talk with me about how to shape up and make herself a little more attractive on every level to men in this world.
So that's 3 free sessions of mansplaining, essentially.
Yes, absolutely, which is exactly what Tomi Lahren needs.
I agree completely. Yeah. Women love mansplaining, and they need it,
Absolutely.
It's a big joke that we've been doing with the 22 convention, the Make Women Great Again event, but that's why I made the first event all male speakers, because I knew it would trigger the feminists, royally, but also that's deeply what women need in America and Canada and the West. They haven't had that. All the men and the fathers and the uncles and the grandfathers, they've been shouted down and shut out and screamed at and told that they're toxic and evil, so that they don't have those conversations anymore. Tomi never got, a very positive masculine influence in her life. And now she's just screaming about bullshit against men on the internet. Like she's hot shit and she's perfect. And quite the opposite's true. Internally, she's very, she's decent looking on the outside, and inside she's pretty ugly.
And, with a change in personality, she would be a lot more attractive than she is. I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't recognize about men is that, okay, yeah, we are geared for physical attraction. That's what our first instinct is, to go toward what is physically attractive to us. But if a woman is a bitch, if she's just, absolutely unusable as a human being and not worth much, she loses her attractiveness. She will actually, when I watched Tomi Lahren do that rant against men, she was less attractive at the end of it than she was at the beginning.
And it makes you want to run away. You just want to get away from her.
The wayfarers on the head didn't help her in the end. She still looked like a conceited, entitled princess that is basically having a temper tantrum because she didn't get her way.
Yeah, she's a brat. And so you would say that we need to make Tomi Lahren great again, basically.
Yes, absolutely. And she could be a great asset. I mean, she's not, ready for prime time in many ways politically as much as some of her peers. I saw her when she was doing purely political commentary. She's a little rough. She could use some polish, be a little bit smoother, but she had potential. And she still could do a good job, but she's going to have to knock the chip off of her shoulder and the halo off of her head that she imagines is there. That's not.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. Our good friend Steve Burley at Studio Burley, he did some videos recently on getting to know BLM, Black Lives Matter, specifically the organization, the formal one that I think has the website, versus the larger kind of disorganized movement around it, which are interrelated, obviously. He did some great videos on that. Everyone watching should go check those out on his channel ASAP. They're some of the best I've seen by far. But I did want to get your opinion, Paul, your personal opinion. What do men and fathers need to know, regardless of their ethnicity or race, about BLM? What have they not maybe seen in the mainstream news, even in Fox News, for example, and Breitbart and stuff like that? What do they need to know?
Well, I think as far as black men and fathers are concerned, especially black fathers, what you need to know about BLM is that you don't exist. It's written right into their charter that you do not exist. They mention mothers, they mention parents, they mention children, and they mention families, not a mention anywhere of fathers. They have been intentionally omitted from the conversation in view of the Marxist model of families, which is to strip masculine leadership out of the home, give women the illusion of power in the home and some real power, and basically tear down the family unit with that as a vehicle. That's been the Marxist approach since the 1930s, when they were calling Soviet women to come out of the oppression of the kitchen and enter the factories alongside the working class. And it didn't work out.
Yeah, it's been
we say the old Soviet Union for a reason, because it didn't work out. And this won't work out. What we see happening in almost all the maladies affecting Black families and the Black culture in America, almost all of it is rooted back to stripping men out of the home.
Yeah.
Every last bit of it, and removing their authority from the home. And we've gotten to the point now where even the idea of two men sitting here talking about the importance of male authority in a home is tremendously taboo and to be avoided at all costs, yet is exactly the antidote to what's happening, what we're seeing with Black Lives Matter, what we see with Antifa and all these other radical fringe groups. This is all a fatherless generation. This is what fatherlessness breeds. And we should be paying attention to this and doing something about it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, as soon as the riots popped off in Minneapolis, I immediately kind of called it the Fatherless Rebellion. We even did an episode of the show called the Fatherless Rebellion with a larger panel. And yeah, I agree. Whether it's Antifa or BLM, it's all just these fatherless, emasculated boys, regardless of how they're acting out and how they look and where they're from. It's all the same crap, and none of them have strong present fathers or any fathers at all. Whether that's because the guy left or because the mother chased him away or the courts chased him away, or whatever happened with all that stuff. Yeah, it's a huge clusterfuck.
I don't think you could find a single Antifa member, a male member who had a female member for that matter, who had a strong relationship with their father. I don't think those if they do exist, they're anomalies. They're just the exception to the rule. What we see is a bunch of fatherless kids acting out. They're angry. They don't know why. And of course, when you take fathers away from children, you get angry adults out of that. They grow up bitter. They grow up disappointed because this huge hole that's been left in their life that nobody even acknowledged was there and was telling them, oh, this is good. You didn't need him anyway. And so they grow up into angry adults, and you give them a chance to express that anger, even though they're not aware consciously of what it's all about. Then when you see these rocks being thrown, fire bombs, cities burning in flames, what I'm looking at is a bunch of kids acting out the anger from the absent fathers in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just madness, man. I did want to mention, so I did want to bring up, you mentioned the BLM being anti-father and omitting fathers from the conversation explicitly in writing in a very Orwellian kind of way, because like you said, they mentioned mothers and parents, and then basically the male version of a parent is just conveniently omitted. But you couldn't do that on accident. I mean, it was on purpose.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the women, these are lesbian feminists that founded BLM. I mean, make no mistake about it. And they're Marxists. They have told the world that they are proud, acclaimed Marxists, and that's their, they've examined all different political philosophies, and that's the one they settled on. And then you get them out on the streets. I think it was just yesterday, telling anybody who cared to listen that the looting and the destruction was reparations.
Wow.
Yeah. And this was a BLM leader on television saying, I don't care if they loot. I don't care if they destroy property. If they're taking something, it's going to help them eat, and they're owed it anyway. Uh, you see, children raised with fathers, one of the things fathers do is they instill discipline in children and a sense of empathy. Without the father, you have unempathetic children, and we have a crisis in lacking empathy. You have to totally lack empathy to be able to rationalize that, hey, if I break your storefront window and steal your life's work in the form of all the merchandise in your store, and I wreck your business, I don't have to feel anything for you. I can just say this is reparations.
Well, that's because burning and looting is mostly peaceful. Didn't you hear, Paul?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
Man.
It's very peaceful looting and burning. They certainly didn't mean any harm by that. But yes, and now their leadership is out there saying this is morally just to behave in this way. You don't get people who had intact families with fathers in the home that grow up to become adults that say burning down your business and stealing all your property is morally just. That doesn't happen. And
Molotovs for peace, man.
That's absolutely right. And I'm fear more of this is coming.
Yeah. I think Trump's gonna win, even for a number of reasons, even considering all the fraud and the potential problems and the Democrat garbage and the manipulations and shit. And I think what's going to happen then is November 4th or some day in November or December, there's going to be a huge wave, a second wave of peaceful burning and looting.
So. Oh, yes. I think no matter who wins, and I agree with you, I think Trump will probably win. I think that the Democrats are killing themselves in swing states right now with the policies that are, ending fracking and supporting Antifa and BLM. I don't think all this is going to play well with undecided voters in swing states. And I think that'll probably get Trump the election. But I think regardless of who's elected, we're going to see an explosion of violence right after the election in the street.
I agree. I've been gearing up, man. Even Florida's been pretty good with a lot of this, with the exception of like major cities like Miami and Tampa. Orlando's had almost nothing, and that's like one of the biggest cities in Florida. So I think I'll be fine. But even so, I'm not taking my chances. And me and a lot of guys I know have been really preparing for something like that.
Absolutely. And you should be. You should be. We moved, nearly 4 years ago now. We moved out of Houston to Southwest Virginia. Best decision I could have ever made in my life when we came here to visit. Before we bought a home, 2016 election was it was leading up to the 2016 election, and it was wall-to-wall Trump signs around here. And we said, here's the spot.
Nice. I did want to ask you before we move off BLM. So they specifically attack, I think, the Western patriarchy, they call it, or Western patriarchal institutions, blah, blah, blah. And even today, I've even seen in Florida, there's a state rep. She's like the Florida miniature AOC, we call her. I forget her name. It's some weird name. And total feminist loser. Very aggressive feminist loser. She's about my age, 29, 30, a little bit younger, but barely. And she talks about smashing the patriarchy like a lot of feminists do. She's a state rep. I mean, she's an elected official. I mean, on one hand, that's just fucking delusional because it's like we don't have a patriarchy. To me, that's obvious. We haven't had one in my lifetime. And even several decades before that, there has not been a patriarchy, if not 100 years now. But what do you think? And what should when men hear smash the patriarchy, even today, what does that really mean? Especially since there is no patriarchy.
It means attack and disempower men. That's all it means. You're right. There is no patriarchy. I mean, there was a patriarchy at one time, but just in the sense that, property was handed down from fathers to sons and names were kept in men. And to that extent, yeah, there was a patriarchy, but it didn't mean much more than that. There was, if there was a real patriarchy by the feminist definition, which is a system that oppresses and abuses women and for the betterment and for the benefit of men, there would have never been feminism. It would have never been allowed to emerge. If the society was structured the way feminists claimed it would, these bitches would be in jail or something like that. Of course, it's nonsense. It never existed. It never has, not in the way that they've defined it. And all they have is this poor substitute, which means find anywhere men have freedom or empowerment in their lives and seek to destroy it.
Yep.
The family is just one area. Look at the ways that women have encroached into men's sphere with banning all male, country clubs, ending any form of male space they can find, while creating and expanding female space, which is exactly what has happened. That's what's going on and nothing else. Their idea of smashing the patriarchy is just a power grab. That's all.
So it's kind of a euphemism then, you would say, for smash men, smash fathers, smash family, male power completely.
Absolutely. Good way to put it. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's a euphemism for destroying men.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of the old, I think George Carlin comedian used to talk about euphemisms a lot. And it's a term I heard when I was very young. And I was like, yeah, this is like a huge euphemism for just smashing very positive things like the nuclear family and fatherhood and all these things. Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit back to politics one more time. I did remember what I wanted to ask you. So with this, this is some website, The Conversation, whatever. There's talking about, Kamala and the VP pick and all that. But the image here is very striking that it has all these potential VP candidates. It's all women, all trying to vie. And of course, Kamala ended up getting it for the VP position for the Democratic Party. Would you say the Democratic Party, a major political party in America, is fundamentally anti-man at this point?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? I mean, and when they're hypocritical about it too, I think it's just hugely ironic and in a very hysterical way that the anti-man, pro-woman party still had to get an old white guy to lead the ticket for them. It's almost like their behavior is so ingrained. They couldn't even come up with a female candidate. They did in 2016, and of course that ended very badly for them because their attitude was any woman.
Yeah,
just
so they picked the worst one imaginable.
Absolutely, pick the worst candidate you could possibly come up with. One of the just disgraceful, dishonest, horrible human being that Hillary Clinton is, and of course she lost.
Yep. Yeah, and it was very joyous to see that. It was very enjoyable.
Yes, it was. It was the liberal tears after that election were very entertaining, and I'm hoping and anticipating that the 2020 election will come out the same way, because I think they're going to be even more enraged.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. They are the female party, so to speak, led by an old white guy.
Yeah, it's like a female supremacist party, really, and that's what anti-man comes down to. It means elevating women above men at the expense of men, and that's exactly what they did with the VP thing. I mean, they excluded any man, whether he was white, Asian, black, whatever, based on the fact that he had a Y chromosome, a dick, and balls. That excluded him from the potential. That's like it's very bigoted. Like,
yes, it is, and I think what's really funny to me though is that or I fully believe that if they had a decent female candidate this time around to put out there, I think they would have done it. But what they've got is this large pool of women, and all of them suck. All of them. They no talent in there, no capacity to run to be the leader of the free world. Are you kidding me?
I think the Tulsi Gabbard chick was slightly less offensive than the other ones, but she hated, they hated her and she hated them because she was not going with the narrative. She was kind of, being more combative.
And Tulsi Gabbard was the only one in the field that really did exude some competence, some good bearing about her. Again, I don't agree with a lot of her politics, but the way she conducted herself, the way she challenged uncomfortable truths in the Democratic Party, the way she just comported herself did speak of leadership. And she has military background and all this. She could have done something. The Democrats didn't want a real female leader.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get the feeling either that she hated America. With the other ones, I just feel like I was like, yeah, this person just hates America, male or female. With her, I didn't get that vibe.
What the Democrats want is a whiner in chief.
Hmm.
And Tulsi Gabbard wasn't going to fit that bill, so they got rid of her. And the women that couldn't measure up. The population didn't want them. And it's going to force the Democrats to contend with one very basic fact that they may not like very much. People, men and women both want male leaders.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know
That's
that.
what,
I've thought about a lot for any presidential candidate. That at the end of the day, they're very different from any other elected official because they're an executive civilian command of an entire military, the most powerful military in the world, and men don't follow women, not well, and we don't. We It's very unnatural. Like, when in history have men done that? There's no behavior pattern in 300,000 years of human history where men are really following women like that. You have queens along the way and some things, but it's unusual.
yes,
And the queens are violent. They go crazy and they and stuff like that.
yes, they start wars and do all kinds of crazy things. And you say that men don't follow women, and there's a reason for that, because women don't know how to lead. A lot of them, I would say most of them, they really don't know how to lead. You hear this complaint from feminists all the time saying, well, when a man is strong and in charge, he's considered a good leader. When a woman is strong and in charge, she's considered a bitch. And they complain about this double standard in perception. It's wrong. The problem is that so many women don't know the difference between being a leader and being a bitch. They think it's the same thing. It's
Yeah,
not the same thing. When you're leading, you take a very different posture than just barking out orders and telling people what to do. People don't want somebody like Martha Stewart running the free world. They just don't. And if women want women leaders, they better start waking up to this, that they're not going to be leading anybody. Women don't want to work for women, and women don't want to follow
yeah,
women. And there's reasons for that. And it's uncomfortable to talk about those reasons, but not talking about them doesn't mean they don't exist.
that's
Those
right.
reasons are there. And if you don't like it, ladies, look, I get it. You want your shot at running something. That's fine. Prove you can run something. Prove you can be a leader. Don't just stand up and say, because I'm a woman. That's not going to cut it.
Well, Paul, you got to believe all women. Obviously, if they have a vagina, they tell the truth all the time, no
Yes,
matter what.
I've
So
noticed that.
obviously,
And I've noticed that they're right all the time, too. Not just truthful, but they're correct.
that's right. Yep.
And we can only just recognize that and bow in our admiration.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you put that they conflate essentially leader and bitch. And really that's just a polite way of saying that they're conflating leader and dictator. Like, a bitch is basically a little miniature dictator that nobody likes, male or female. Who wants to be hang out
Absolutely.
with a bitch all day or follow the leadership of a bitch? Nobody. Yeah.
They're Karens.
Yeah. Yep.
What can I say? They didn't make that word up out of the blue. This concept of the officious, capricious woman that barges in and demands to see the manager and get her way. That's so often what women claim is female leadership. And they don't understand. All it does is off-putting. It makes people disgusted, and it makes them not respect you. And leaders have to have respect.
I wanted to ask you, let me pull this up real quick. We'll pull this. This will be fun. So, what are your thoughts on? I view as I don't think it's super important, but I think it's interesting to look at, and it could be important. There seems to be kind of a little miniature civil war occurring in feminism, and I think Karen is kind of part of that. They seem to be ostracizing the white feminists out of the feminist movement, and J.K. Rowling speaking out against trans stuff in defense of women, in her view. I think is maybe a part of that. So do you have any thoughts on any kind of feminist civil war they have internally going on between the white feminists and the black feminists, or all kinds of stuff like that?
Oh, I think it's emerging. Certainly, I don't know if the Karen phenomena is a part of that. It may be, but I do know that feminists of color, God, I hate that term, but I'm going to say it just for reference sake, that feminists of color want white women to shut up and get out of the way. They're making that very plain.
They're
And
basically cannibalizing each other in a sense, right?
sure. And I think it's eventually what happens with all Marxism. Eventually, you eat your own. That's what's going to happen, and I'm fine with enjoying the show. I mean, that's a reason to make popcorn. You guys go after. Men love cat fights, so I'm like, come on, let's bring it on. Let's get a Texas death match going and put them in the ring. I'm all for it.
It's very entertaining to watch the feminists beat each other up and stuff. Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a very nasty movement. It's very disgusting, and I think it's very, very evil and wrong, and it needs to end. And it's if this helps it along, I'm for it. So, shifting gears a little bit, I had a more kind of practical question for you. What would you say to, and I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, what would you say to young men today, say millennials and even older, Gen Z men? What would you say to the young men who want to build families today in America and in Canada and the West?
I would say first thing you need to do is get a mentor. And by that, I don't mean somebody to tell you how to live or to teach you a trade, but to find somebody, a man a few years older than you at least, who has an investment in your life to have a connection with. I mean, it's just that simple. One of the things that feminism has destroyed in this culture, and that men allowed to be destroyed, was the whole art of mentoring, of older men teaching younger men how to take care of themselves, how to succeed in the world, that sort of thing. That's been a lost art. And for any young man approaching all the decisions you're going to have to make about like marriage and dating and career and everything else that goes into it, when you're talking to millennials, Gen Z, Gen Y, you're generally talking to young men who are part of a fatherless generation. And this is why the mentoring is so important. And it doesn't even matter if they actually were some of the few that had their fathers and families intact. Their culture, their peers, all are part of a fatherless generation. And they're disconnected and they're angry. And I get it, It was on men of my generation and my father's generation to stop this bullshit from happening, and we didn't. And so I totally get it when a young man looks at a guy my age and says, I don't have, he's like, okay, boomer, I don't have a thing I want to listen to from this guy. Can't blame them. They've been disappointed along every step of the way. But if they can get past that, they're going to get a lot of benefit out of some sort of connection with an older man who's been through some of the ropes. And also, I mean, one of the things I got to say, don't get married.
Yeah.
Not until they fix, and this is where, and I guess we'll get into a few minutes of the MGTOW thing. This is where some of the MGTOW really take exception to my work and to what MRAs do. They're saying we're just trying to get the plantation tidied up so that men can walk back on it. And if that of course is utter bullshit. What we're trying to do, and let me just say this from a personal perspective, if you've got a problem with me trying to improve the lives of men a little bit, I don't give a shit. What we're trying to do is give men reasonable options. And those reasonable options when it comes to marriage are not there yet. They need to fix the system first. They need to make it so that you're not, if I said, Anthony, tell you what, let's go in this casino, bring all your money, and you got a 50-50 chance of walking out of here dead broke. You wouldn't do it. That's exactly what marriage is.
I have a interesting. So my next question was going to be on, actually, you've hit the nail on the head. It was your general thoughts on MGTOW, the movement and the community, which is, in my opinion, operating parallel within the manosphere as another kind of tribe to men's rights, to the pickup artists, and even to the red pill community. It's the four tribes.
Sure. Well, and to me, I would also like to call it four reactions. The men's movement, if we want to talk about a movement, happens in different ways. Men are reacting to feminism, the effects of feminism, and the effects of gynocentrism on their lives and on this society. Some men react to it by going the PUA route and being a lot more calculated about their interactions with women. Some men swear off women. Some men try to work to make things better for men in the legal sense. We're all, in one way or another, reacting to the reality on the ground between men and women.
And that's basically risk and threat assessment to feminism, is what you're saying.
Absolutely right. And some guys choose different ways to express that. Now, when it comes to MGTOW individually, it's wisdom. I really do see it as wisdom. I mean, of course, it depends on the degree. And I've had a lot of disagreements with some guys in the MGTOW community. One, because if you're ideological, shit, I don't even want to hear it. Ideology is part of the problem. I don't go for Menonism or anything like that. If you're
they're kind of married to the ideas, and they're no longer active minded to talk and debate.
Exactly. When a guy says the only way to survive is to swear women off entirely, that's where his mind is, and he's full of shit. In my book, I'm in a relationship for 18 years, and I'm sitting here happy and healthy. I know many others that have done the same thing. Your claim that there's no such thing as a successful relationship long term is wrong. It's absolutely in error. Yet there are guys out there who swear adamantly that no man can ever survive the gauntlet of relationships, and that they always.
It's factually incorrect. There's the minority of relationships that do work.
Absolutely, and but I think you have to be realistic enough to recognize that you are not in the majority if you have a long-term working relationship, and that there are characteristics that men must have or should have going into it, like boundaries and their own values that they're going to live by, and they're not going to sacrifice for a piece of ass. I think a lot of the guys that are what I call ideological MGTOW are guys that never found out how to keep themselves intact. They're powerless with women, which is to say they're very gynocentric. And so for them, the only way they can survive is to shut off women entirely.
Yeah. And I have a personal anecdote I think you'll find pretty interesting that you were partly influential to. So there's a story on YouTube, a speech I gave called Marrying Medusa, How to Survive a Female Psychopath. It's a speech I gave back in 2016, actually, in June, at one of my conventions for young men, actually. We have a young men's version, too. We don't do it that often, but sometimes. And it was my 2-hour speech on my experience of accidentally, or not accidentally, but unknowingly, marrying a BPD hooker. Crazy chick, super BPD, comorbid too, I think, with other, you could say other disorders probably. That's just armchair psychoanalyzing, of course. I'm not a professional. But she was a hidden prostitute, an escort for a long time. All kinds of shenanigans. People can look it up on YouTube. But even though we were, in a sense, married for 2 years and had dated for 2.5 years prior to that, I did not get legally married, specifically because of the horror stories I heard in the pickup artist community, which are very similar to men's rights. Guys would come into the pickup community because they went through a nasty divorce. They lost their ass with child custody. They lost their ass with divorce rape. And they would come in and tell these stories alongside, hey, I want to get better with women. I'm back on the dating market, things like that. I had that experience as a young pickup artist, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. I then was aware of the Spearhead. I was interviewed by the founder. I was reading some of your work and the men's rights websites and things. And then on top of that, I was a very big fan of Ron Paul, Congressman Ron Paul, and his son Rand Paul, who were the only senators and politicians I knew that were philosophically opposed to the government getting involved in marriage. They were advocates of what they called private marriage. And because of this combination of forces, you, the Spearhead, men's rights, pickup artists, horror stories, essentially, of the divorce rape, and then even a political angle to it as well. Like, government should just get out of marriage, period. It just fucks it all up.
Amen.
Well, so I ended up marrying this chick, sort of, but I didn't get legally married, and that was the plan going in, and I refused to. She was not happy about this initially, of course, but I was like, I want to build a family. I love you, all these things, but I'm never going to get legally married, not to you or any woman, because the system is fucked up for men specifically, but even more broadly, it's just fucking stupid that the government's involved. They don't do anything to cause problems here, other than maybe contract enforcement if you had a contract to enforce, and that's it. That to me is the only role. So at 24 years old, I concocted this idea of a private marriage in my own style, and I looked up the laws of common law marriage and things like that to avoid it, so I wouldn't get roped into that either. And we had a wedding. Families came out. We had a honeymoon in Hawaii. We traded rings. She even legally took my last name. Went to the courthouse, filed the paperwork, all that shit. So in all social senses, we were married, minus the the marriage certificate, the marriage license, and that of course ended up protecting me, massively, especially in Florida with lifetime alimony. All these other problems could have occurred, and it was very controversial even then. A lot of even in the manosphere, people were kind of curious about it, but more supportive. The general population. My family was very opposed to it. I had to tell them basically, be okay with it or piss off. Like this is not a debate, because I knew from reading the Spearhead and the pickup artist stuff, I was like, this is just fucked. It doesn't matter if she's the best woman in the world. There's no purpose to her having this marriage license in me. It doesn't do anything to bring the government into my life and my home. Anything positive anyway. It's just stupid. So I think that's a pretty good option for young men today in America if they can do it in the state they live. Common law marriage is a big problem in some states, but not too many. So
yeah, I think a continuation of what I would have said with your question, what would you tell young men after getting a mentor? Get a lawyer.
Yeah,
Go in
get
and
a lawyer.
find out the laws in your state where you live, or province where you live, or whatever area you live in the world. Find out exactly what it takes for you to end up being considered de facto marriage by the law, because there's some places you live with somebody for a few months and they can turn around and file for divorce. Other places you have to meet a bunch of other criteria that are very deliberate, and so it's much easier to stay unmarried. I've made it a point, 18 years in the same relationship, I'm not getting married. It's just not going to happen. And I totally agree with the libertarian approach to that. And it was really interesting because, I had a bunch of conservatives angry at me back in the day over my reaction to the idea of gay marriage, which was, I think it's stupid to allow the state to license a marriage to begin with. I mean, I think that your problem starts before it comes to gay marriage. The problem is legally sanctioned marriage. Why are you allowing the state to license your relationship?
Yeah, the government is a giant bureaucratic machine. What benefit does it bring? The only thing they should do is enforce a contract if you have one written, and that's it, and signed.
Absolutely. If you have considered a contract, if you have one written, the state does have a valid purpose in there to regulate contracts. But the fact of the matter is, you're crazy to want the state involved in your life in that way anyway, because guess what, guys? The woman in most every case is temporary. We don't have to like it. But you have to accept that the numbers say that there's no such thing, or there's very rarely you grow old and you both die within a few days of each other at 95. That doesn't happen for the most part. The woman will go away, but the state will be there forever, because you're not really marrying a woman. You're marrying the state. You're inviting the state to go in and regulate that part of your life. And when you think about it, it makes no sense. I wasn't worried about gay marriage destroying the sanctity of the man-woman relationship. They started destroying the sanctity of the man and woman relationship the moment they allowed the government to intervene and regulate those relationships.
And then things like no-fault divorce just piled salt on a wound. It just got worse and worse and worse.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ronald Reagan, for that. Actually, again, we get, I definitely lean conservative in many ways, but the conservatives are not any more of a friend to men than liberals are. And it's important to know that.
We have a
Well,
quick
outside with
super
the
chat.
exception of Donald.
Yeah, he's a fun one, dude. So we have a question here from Super Chat Ray Patson. Thank you for the, it looks like Australian $5. I appreciate that. I like MGTOW, but practically as I'm getting older, I'm feeling more loneliness. I want to ask Paul about what having woman partner as for company. Tips?
Absolutely. Don't ignore your feelings. The fact of the matter is that human beings are not wired to fly solo. And I know there's going to be a guy in the audience that says, I am. Okay, I'm not questioning you, dude. I'm sure that you're just fine living in a cave without another human being around you for the rest of your life. I'm sure you're great that way. But guess what? 99.9% of the human race is not wired that way. We are wired to cohabitate. We are wired to pair bond as a species. There's no getting away from that. And for most men, you will have something missing in your lives if you're single in perpetuity. Again, there's going to be exceptions to that, I'm sure. But the fact of the matter is, you want that. That loneliness is telling you there's an incomplete part of your life. The challenge is in who you connect to and how, what boundaries you bring into that, what values you bring into that. Because if your value is, I'll just take any woman as long as she'll have me, that's how guys end up under rocks and how they end up going MGTOW. Because they go into the relationship with, my standard is, will she sleep with me? And let's face it, guys, that's the standard for a lot of men. Yeah. Am I attracted to her? And if I'm attracted to her and she's attracted to me, the screening ends right there.
I think you just described Tommy Lauren's entire Instagram following. All these thirsty beta males, yeah.
Yes, anything even for the illusion. Why you see so many white knights on the internet, they come in to rescue the maiden because it makes them feel this much closer to her. Yeah. That's what they want. Well, guess what? You don't have to do it that way. You can have standards. I told my partner at the very beginning of our relationship that if I had $10 million in the bank, I wouldn't finance a relationship. That if she wanted to be with me, she would have to bring her purse. I went through about 20 women before that. And as soon as they heard that line, they were like, thank you, but no thank you.
I'm looking for a wallet to rape. Bye.
Yes. And I was like, good, bye, see you. And then I was persistent with my values. And I finally said to one woman, you have to show up with your purse. And guess what she said? Of course I do. I have a job. I don't want you to carry all the weight. We'll share this thing. Bingo. 18 years later, I'm still with her because I wouldn't tolerate anything less than that.
Yeah. Final kind of closing out here. So you mentioned boundaries and things like that. And I think you're kind of hinting at toxic relationships that men get into. And I think you've done some videos on the subject, but do you have any thoughts on let's say this. Do you have any thoughts on the relationship between BPD chicks, cluster B women with personality disorders, and feminism? Like, is feminism as a cultural force enabled toxic behaviors and malicious behavior, even in a sense? So the relationship between cluster B disorders and women and feminism.
Well, yeah, and to really expand on that a little bit more, there's a correlation between the indices of cluster B and personality disorders and just being female in modern culture. Okay. Borderline traits in women are commonplace. The entitlement, the histrionics, the willingness to engage in exaggerated drama in order to get their way, the use of false allegations in order to get their way, or to punish, or to make excuses for their own behavior. This happens all the time. But to more directly answer your question, yes, you can put the characteristics of feminists and their behavior on a page and set that next to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders definition of borderline or narcissistic personality or histrionic personality, and you're going to see them line up right straight down the column. Feminism is a mental disorder, and it is in there with the personality disorders. There's no doubt in my mind that it is the codified personality disorder. That's what feminism is.
Yeah, it's well put. Feminism is a mental disorder. It's like the personality disorder of an entire couple generations of women now, and it's
Yes.
unique. It's unique to the West. You know, it's a lot less prevalent, I think, in Eastern Europe and parts of South America. And I spent a month in Poland last year for our convention we held there in Warsaw, and then I went to the other city there, basically the cultural capital. They call it Krakow in the south. And feminism there is so much less prevalent. It's beautiful. The women there make fun of feminism. They saw my hat and they would ask me, like, "Are you a feminist?" You know, it's like an accusatory kind of stance. I was like, "No, not even a little bit." And like, okay, yeah, feminism, and we would talk about how stupid it is. I mean, that's commonplace conversation you can have there.
And it makes perfect
Starbucks.
sense. You're talking about Central Europe there, Poland, Czech
Yeah.
Republic, Hungary, all these areas that know Marxism very well, that know where Marxism goes. They tend to be non-feminist. And it's because feminism is an offshoot of Marxism. There's not really any distinction between the two. And they still have a cultural memory there in Central Europe for what happens, which is, dead people and things like that. Ultimately, that's what happens with Marxism.
Yeah, gulags, firing squads, gas chambers, famine, starvation, tyranny, totalitarianism, just mass, misery. It sucks. It's amazing that communism is still as popular as it is. It's worse than Nazism.
Yes, it is.
Here's a comment from a viewer. Paul should be in charge of the new feminist studies that they teach in every university. I'm in favor of that. Let's do it.
That wouldn't last very long because Paul would dismantle all the feminist studies in every university. We shouldn't be funding. I mean, we're in a crisis now, $1.3 trillion of student loan debt. 70% of it is women with bullshit gender studies degrees who can't get jobs and pay back their student loans.
Yeah. Thank you again for the super chat here from Sydney McTow. Paul's video, Daddy's Little Nightmare, details a significant part of the problem we have now. Is that on your channel? I haven't seen that.
Yes, that is on my channel. And also it is on the Regarding Men website where I'm working now with Janice Fiamingo and Tom Golden. But it is about the roles that fathers play in breeding entitlement into daddy's little girl. And this is feminism is a big problem. It's huge. And I don't want to distract from that for a minute, but we also need to take a look at, you take the average married man, and I mean, very average, who is pulling his own hair out. He's frustrated as hell with his wife because no matter what he does, she can't be pleased. She's never happy with him. She always wants him to make more money. She always wants him to do more for her. It's never enough. And he complains about it and says, "Oh man, I'm married to this horrible woman, but it's going to cost me a fortune to divorce her. She never leaves me alone. She never no matter what I do, it's not enough." And then he puts his 4-year-old daughter on his lap and coddles her and raises her to get a man just like daddy. And it does all this with no cognitive dissonance whatsoever. He instills in her the entitlement that he is suffering from in his wife. He is the source of it. Nothing is ever good enough for his little girl. No matter what she wants, all she has to do is climb up in his lap and wrap her little arms around his neck, and she can have whatever she wants for her whole life. And I don't even want to get into the Freudian implications of that kind of shit. But all you got to do is think about it, and you end up in a dark alley. And this is how men breed entitlement in women, is by treating their little girls like princesses. Every time I see a little girl with a princess sparkly things and wearing the tiara and waving the little staff, I think, oh man, eventually one day she will make some man so miserable he may kill himself.
Yep. Never mind, and herself on top of that. Before that, and the endless cycle of insanity. You know, it's interesting too. The princess thing you're mentioning here. I mean, I've seen that. I know exactly what you're referring to. But now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, probably. But millennial women, in particular, I've seen older Gen Z. They have this queen thing now. They're queen, hashtag queen this, queen that on Instagram. They even when the pandemic hit, earlier this year, they started saying, "I'm a quarantine queen, quarantine queen." Everything's queen, 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 queen. And really, it's a very obvious, just older version of a princess. The princess
Oh,
became
sure. And in
queen.
the 80s, they had for about 10 years there, they had the big goddess binge. It was everything that was women who were goddesses, and there were goddess groups and books written about your inner goddess. Um, yeah, is and that and other fairy tales.
Yeah, your inner demon.
Yeah,
When that unicorn grows his second horn.
absolutely.
Well, Paul, this has been a very pleasant conversation. I'm really happy you came on the show. Very much appreciate your time.
I've enjoyed it very much. I hope your audience enjoyed it. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. And like I mentioned, we'd love to have you at the 21 convention in the future. I know you can't make it this year, but we do it every year now, 14 years in a row, and that's always going to be open for you.
Let's try it next year. I'll see if I can make it. I would love to do it.
Yeah, 21 convention in 2021 sounds good. Everyone, make sure you visit.
Also, let me get just one little pitch in here. Come
Sure.
visit us on regardingmen.com.
Okay.
We have set up now, we're doing discussion groups 7 days a week, 90-minute groups for any man that wants to join us, talking about the issues that Anthony and I have just talked about, other issues, marriage, divorce, family, parental alienation, false accusations, all those things. And this is going on live right now, 7 days a week. So I want to invite everybody to join us if they want to.
Sounds good. Guys, make sure you check it out, regardingmen.com. Sorry, my hotel internet here is a little slow. You can also
That's
learn more
all
from
right.
Paul. Yeah, you can learn more from Paul at paulelam.com. He's also on YouTube. If you just type Paul Elam, I think you'll pull up his channel right away. And the title is An Ear for Men, as the current title. Last but not least, make sure you check out the 21convention.org. Get your tickets now. Early bird sales still going on. We are 47 days out from 21 Summit Super Triple Conference event. We got one event for men, one for fathers, and one for women. Whatever your demographic is, we got you covered. We'll make you great again. That's it. Paul, thank you again for your time. I'm going to end the broadcast. And everyone else, I'll see you next week on the show. Thank
Take
you,
care.
Paul.
Bye-bye.